We'll call the meeting of the Minot City Council to order for today, Monday, June 6, 2022. It is 5:30 in the afternoon. It's great to see so many people in attendance. I would just ask if you do have a cell phone or electronic device that you go ahead and put those on silent or on vibrate, and we'll keep the distractions down to a minimum as we have a number of really good proclamations to get through here before too long. But before we do, roll call, please.
Evans?
Here.
Janser?
Here.
Olson?
Here.
Pittner?
Here.
Quadrigula?
Yes, here.
Ross?
Here.
Sitma?
Here. Number 2 is Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Number 3 is the mayor's report. I will go through my monthly activities before getting to the proclamations here, just real briefly. Taking a look at my activities for May and for part of June. Taking a look at the first page here, we do have a number of different community economic activity meeting that we did hold on the 3rd. NOS funding local cost share meeting also took place. Military affairs on the 5th. The MI1 ribbon cutting with the governor and Senator Hoeven. A great day to see yet another one of our milestones complete in the Magic City, and we even got a mostly nice day to celebrate that achievement. And then we did do a little bit of landfill trash cleanup. That was not a nice day. Rain and 50-mile-per-hour winds. But the good news is we did get through a lot of those farm fields to clear them of plastic so that spring planting, the spring planting that is going on right now wasn't hindered or obstructed by some of that trash blowing around. So despite the inclement weather, we did get through a good chunk of those 3 different sections. On the 17th, we were going through our budget tours. On the 18th, I did participate in the Best of the Class presentation, talking with the more than 160 seniors throughout the region. Task Force 21 met at Minot Air Force Base on the 21st with a barbecue for the commanders that are getting set to change out and move on as they've completed their 2-year tour here at Minot Air Force Base. On the 23rd, Congressman Kelly Armstrong was in town for a meeting and then a tour of our flood control project. And then on June 1st, I did provide a welcome, and Alderwoman Evans was also on hand, as well as the city manager and the chief for an opioid roundtable discussion out at the North Central Research Extension Center. June 2nd was the Military Affairs Committee. And then today, we did have the 91st Missile Wing change of command. I wanted to say congratulations to Colonel Chris Menaway and his family, as they have had a very successful 2 years here at Minot Air Force Base with an outstanding record of service. Chris and his family will be missed. But the good news is we have another great gentleman who is coming into command. He took command this morning, Colonel Kenneth McGee. Glad to have him back, as he was, I believe, a missileer in the past at Minot Air Force Base. So he is now the 91st Wing Commander back for our next 2 years. Earlier today, we did break ground at the fire station number 5, which I wasn't quick enough to get a picture and get it onto the report, but great moment for another celebration for an achievement for the community. Any questions outside of that? A number of other regular city business meetings, lots of phone calls, emails, and interactions with staff on city business. Any questions on my report? If not, stand by. We have some proclamations. So the mayor proclaims June 6th as Sophia Egge and Eden Olson Appreciation Day, whereas Minot High School is a proud institution featuring outstanding education and extracurricular opportunities, whereas the Minot High School tennis team has a long tradition of excellence in both team and individual competition, which continued in 2022 with Eden Olson and Sophia Egge winning their 2nd straight state champion in doubles competition. Now, therefore, do I, Sean Sitman, the mayor of Minot, North Dakota, hereby proclaim June 6, 2022 as Eden Olson Sophia Egge Appreciation Day and encourage all Minot residents to celebrate the 2022 state doubles champion and recognize Eden and Sophia and their coaches for a season of excellence that shines a spotlight on the successful academic athletic program organized and managed by Minot High School. Once I get through all of these, we'll invite everybody up for pictures with the council, but we've got a couple more. The mayor proclaims June 6th as Gabe Mortensen Appreciation Day, whereas the Minot Public School District is a proud institution featuring outstanding education and extracurricular opportunities, and whereas the Minot High boys wrestling team has a long tradition of excellence that includes winning state championships, both as a team and individual competition, which continued in 2022 with Gabe Mortensen's winning the state Class A 126-pound championship. Now, therefore, do I, Sean Sitman, the mayor of Minot, North Dakota, hereby proclaim June 6, 2022 as Gabe Mortensen Appreciation Day and encourage all Minot residents to celebrate Gabe's 2022 state Class A 126-pound championship and recognize Gabe and his coaches for a season of excellence that shines a spotlight on the successful academic and athletic programs organized and managed by the Minot Public Schools. The mayor also proclaims June 6 as the Evan Putt Appreciation Day, whereas Minot Public School District is a proud institution featuring outstanding education and extracurricular opportunities, whereas in 2022, the Minot High School speech team competed in the 69th annual North Dakota High School Activities Association sponsored state Class A speech tournament, and whereas MHS student Evan Putt finished first in Class A impromptu speech division. Now, therefore, do I, Sean Sitman, the mayor of Minot, North Dakota, hereby proclaim June 6, 2022 as Evan Putt Appreciation Day and encourage all Minot residents to celebrate Evan's recent state Class A impromptu speech championship and recognize Evan and his coaches for shining a spotlight on the successful extracurricular programs organized and managed by the Minot Public Schools. The mayor also proclaims June 6th as Annabelle Ebel Appreciation Day, whereas Our Redeemer's Christian School is a proud institution featuring outstanding education and extracurricular opportunities, whereas Our Redeemer's has a long tradition of excellence in its music and choir programs, which continued in 2022 with Annabelle Ebel being selected as a member of the All-State Choir. Now, therefore, do I, Sean Sitman, the mayor of Minot, North Dakota, hereby proclaim June 6, 2022 as Annabelle Ebel's Appreciation Day and encourage all Minot residents to celebrate Annabelle's all-state choir selection and recognize Annabelle for her accomplishment that shines a spotlight on the successful academic and extracurricular programs organized and managed through Our Redeemer's Christian School. Congratulations. Last but not least, the mayor proclaims June 6 as CTE Appreciation Day, whereas the city of Minot recognized that qualified, skilled workforce is essential to the economic well-being of Minot's businesses, industry, and public sector, whereas a career in technical education provides high school, post-secondary, and adult learners with technical skills, knowledge, and attitudes necessary for successful performance in globally competitive workplace, whereas a vigorous program under CTE prepares future leaders and entrepreneurs for rewarding career in agriculture, business, and finance, marketing and management, hospitality, health, science, education, information technology, engineering, building trades, welding, automotive technology, auto collision and repair, aviation, and other professions. Now, therefore, do I, Sean Sitman, the mayor of Minot, North Dakota, hereby proclaim June 6, 2022 as the Career and Technical Education Appreciation Day in Minot and encourage residents to recognize the excellent work done in all CTE programs and other similar programs, including DECA, Technology Student Association, TSA, the Family Career and Community Leaders of America, FCCLA, the FFA, Skills USA, Health Occupation Students of America, also known as HOSA, and Future Business Leaders of America, FBLA, in preparing the youth for our communities for their future careers. So with that, typically we invite everyone up to come and join the city council up front, and I'll try to get the appropriate different proclamations to everybody so we can get a group picture of Minot, which I think are now needing to change its name to Titletown, North Dakota. So if you would, please come up. Right up front.
They're not as tall as basketball players.
No.
Which one are? Sophia. You will have individual proclamations for each one of you here, Annabelle. That is yours. And then we have Evan. Where's Evan? May not have name. CTE representative from Minot Public Schools. If she's back in the back. Pam,
That's you, Eric.
did you want to come up with Titletown?
I want to squeeze right between the red and the black there.
Okay, so everybody needs to face this way, so kind of all working. As they say, if you can't see the camera can't see you. Okay, step in front of me. Okay, yes.
Do I hold this up? Oh, we're just gonna stand.
Look at all those cameras. Congratulations, everyone.
So how about a big round of applause? And everyone does have a signed proclamation for you, and if you want to see Anna right here, she will make sure she gets a copy. All right, thank you so much for coming, and we appreciate all the hard work and dedication for your school and for the athletic and academic achievements. Thank you. All right, if you want to follow Anna back, make sure we get you the appropriate proclamations, and I'm going to hand those off.
Yeah, because you have so much time.
Thank you for being here.
What does the hoses stand for in the back of your shirt? Got it, okay. Now I feel like my security
One more.
We forgot copied any of these pictures. Anna needs
That's
to
true.
send them to Derek or something. We have
That's
to.
true, we need to get those out.
Yeah.
A nice big montage, Titletown, North Dakota. All right, now we're back to our regularly programmed schedule here. Looking down, that is the end of my mayor's report. Number 4 on our agenda is the city manager's report. Mr. Stewart.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. I guess first and foremost would be the traditional request. Is there any questions with regards to the city manager memo that's provided in the packet as part of the meeting materials and open to the public?
Any questions for the city manager?
Okay. Not hearing any, just a couple of points real quick. First and foremost, I know that many of you have worked with Ms. Brecca Kramer over the years in many capacities, but I think this is her first time as the Executive Director of MAC-EDC here in attendance at the meeting. So I just wanted to congratulate her on her appointment on that, and that I look forward to working with her and her organization here for the foreseeable future. Secondly, our economic development staff and I recently returned from a trip to Las Vegas at the ICSC Recon Conference, and I've asked Mr. Rosenthal to provide a brief update to the council and the public on the fruits of that trip.
Good afternoon, Mr. Rosenthal. If you would, just pull the microphone over so that, and hit the button.
Is that it? I think we're good. Okay. Last summer, you might recall, the City Council engaged the retail coach as a consultant to assist Minot in recruiting retail users. The benefits of expanded retail are diversification of choices, enhanced quality of life, increased tax base, and more employment opportunities. As Minot is the service and retail hub of the north central and northwestern corner of the state and our border with Canada, we on city staff are well aware of the importance of retail expenditures, what they have on our community. In the current retail climate, it is not surprising that those stores that are most actively seeking space are discounters and food establishments. So during the recent International Shopping Center Show in Las Vegas, which is the biggest retail show in the world, and I can tell you the day the city manager and I were there, I know that my phone says we walked over 6 miles. So that's a lot of space indoors. And you're looking across, and it's just this huge place. And you've got loads of people there. We visited directly with the booths of retailers such as Burlington, Big Five Sporting Goods, who are not in the state yet, TJX Brands, Spirit of Halloween, Halloween City, and Walmart. With persistent efforts from our consultant, the retail coach, we had been able to secure a half-hour retailer meeting with the real estate director for our area, who said that he had spent some time over the last 6 weeks taking a better look at our information. So that was an encouraging thing when we met with them. We provided them with market area information and, more importantly, information about specific sites for development. So other users were given information on vacancies for rent. The city manager and I also visited a number of food and entertainment outlets, including Chipotle, Focus Brands, Tropical Smoothie Cafe, Panda Express, Circle K, Freddy's Frozen Custard and Steak Burgers, Launch Entertainment, and Popeyes. Finding appropriate franchisees is a barrier for some of the brands. One of the location finders said they were very interested, and in fact, she told us that she had recently been to Minot and loved touring our Scandinavian Heritage Park. So definitely made an impression. Many retailers provided us with valuable information on their site selection criteria, and that helps us help them. Although others had a broad range of requirements that, it's hard to pin down somebody who's giving you a broad range. But regardless, they had sometimes a one-size-fits-all kind of thing that frankly wasn't so useful, but most people were pretty specific. One retailer told us they were already committed to taking space in one of Minot's retail centers. I will let them make their own announcements, if you'll pardon me. And we spoke to one pop-up that would like space right now, also speaking with the retailer. So this was the thing that was really exciting, and that is when we got back, ended on Tuesday. When we got back on Wednesday, we had an immediate call back after the conference, and one retailer said they wanted to ramp up their focus on Minot. So we made it clear that we plan to actively assist them in their efforts, and we're providing more site information right now. We will follow up with all interested parties, even though we have one particularly exciting one. The city has also developed successful contacts to the retail coach outside of the show. I don't want to say it's all based on one visit. And we're pursuing that again for both retail and restaurant users. We let our developers and end users know of the city's interest, our willingness to work with them, and the availability of vacancies and sites for development, and that includes our downtown. You'll pardon me for being, I gave you a few specific that people that we spoke to, but there are a few that discretion is required at this time, but we will never proceed to any decision that requires official action without consulting everybody openly.
Thank you, Mr. Rosenthal. Mr. Stewart, do you have anything further to add on the report?
Just some final comments here. If you recall some of the results from our community survey, particularly in the realm of economic development, one of the highest priorities that was communicated to us by our citizenry was recruitment of more national brand retails to our community. And so I think thank you to the commitment from the City Council over the last 18 months. I think we're off to a great start with this, and we look forward to some very positive announcements hopefully here in the near future. With regards to some of this development, as I talked to some community leaders about this is probably some of the best progress we've had over the last several years with some of these representatives. But we continue to have great success. I think Minot is in a great opportunity right now for growth that will continue here for the next several years. And I think we're doing a good job of trying to capitalize on that momentum for the best of the community that we possibly can going forward. Obviously, as Mr. Rosenthal stated, we don't want to get into too many specifics. Some of that is kind of helping set some of the expectations. There's still a lot of decisions that have to be made. But we also want the council and the community to see the value in these efforts and the investment in this time. I will also reiterate to Mr. Rosenthal that for those that may think that staff is just taking a paid vacation on the back of the taxpayers, there was little time or energy after doing this all day to do anything significantly fun in Vegas. In fact, I think I flew out at 3 o'clock in the morning, caught a red-eye flight back out at 12:45 a.m. and returned back to Minot at about 10:30 Tuesday morning. So there was no time, and I was very exhausted afterwards.
It's exhausting. Absolutely, it's
But it was a
exhausting.
worthwhile trip. I think it was worth the investment, and the quality of the meetings that we had was very good. And I appreciate our partner with Retail Coach that did a very good job of scheduling those connections in advance and laying that groundwork for us to have a successful visit and meetings in Las Vegas.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. It certainly will be worthwhile moving forward to see what comes of that and being able to pair that with some of the discussions and groundwork, as it were, moving forward for Retail Coach and for staff's time on that. So looking forward to that.
Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Rosenthal or Mr. Stewart at this time?
Just one more point before I
Mr.
close up,
Stewart.
City Manager. I'm done with,
Okay, thank
with
you.
you, Jonathan. Thank you. Just one other final point, and that is we'll be concluding, well, not fully concluding, but wrapping up some of our council staff interaction for the immediate process of the budget this Wednesday. So we have a prioritization session with the full council and staff Wednesday morning. That'll be held at the Carnegie Center. That meeting is posted on the city website. It is an open and public meeting. So again, now is the time that we're making budgetary prioritization decisions with regards to the budget for the next 12 to 18 months. So now is a great opportunity for public input into that process. But we look, staff has spent a lot of time, a lot of hours here over the last couple of weeks speaking and presenting to the council as far as what we've been doing with the past and current budget and what we foresee as needs for upcoming budgets. But in this meeting specifically, staff is looking forward to listening to the council's discussion and priorities so that we can make sure that we bring forward a recommended budget that balances the council priorities as well as staff needs going forward. So again, that's this Wednesday at the Carnegie Building in the morning. With that, I have no other things to cover underneath the city manager report.
All right, thank you, Mr. Stewart. Last call for questions. All right. Moving forward, on to our next item, that is number 5, the city attorney's report. Ms. Hendershot.
Mr. Mayor and members of council, I submitted a written report once again, and I would be happy to take any questions.
Any questions for our city attorney on her written report?
Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Number 6 on our agenda are the consent items. There are 23 different items under consent. I have not been asked to pull any individually ahead of the meeting. I would look out into the audience if there's any one item that needs to be pulled for individual consideration. Otherwise, it will be passed as recommended by staff. Any items that need to be pulled from council? Seeing none, I would look for a motion.
Move approval.
Motion by Alderman Pittner to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderwoman Olson. Any discussion on the motion to approve consent items 1 through 23? Second call for discussion. Final call for discussion. Seeing none, the motion is to approve. Please call the roll.
Pittner,
Yes.
Quadrigula,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Sitma,
Yes.
Evans.
Yes.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson.
Yes.
Motion is approved. That takes us into the next section of our agenda. These are the action items. 7.1 is approve the CDBG NDR substantial amendment number 8. The primary reason and need for the substantial amendment number 8 is to address the adjustments needed in funding allocations for certain activities in the action plan. This amendment proposes adding $150,407.50 in the funding to the multifamily affordable rental housing from the following activities: Affordable Housing Master Plan of the $150,072.50, the Housing Supply Demand Study of $20, and In-Plan Economic Model of $315. These 3 planning activities in which funds are being removed from of all accomplish the intended goals set forth in the action plan using less than the funded allocating, allowing the transfer to the multifamily affordable rental housing. In addition, this amendment proposes transferring the $2,511,722.50 from the single-family affordable housing and $786,820 from the administration to multifamily affordable rental housing to increase that budget line item to a total of $3,449 million overall. The recommendations to the council is that the City Council approve the CDBG NDR substantial amendment number 8 authorizing the submission to HUD following public comment period.
Move approval.
Motion by Alderwoman Olson to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Janser. Discussion on the motion to approve. Any discussion on the motion? Final call for discussion. Seeing none, the motion is to approve. Please call the roll.
Olson?
Yes.
Pittner?
Yes.
Padracula?
Yes.
Ross?
Yes.
Sitma?
Yes.
Evans?
Yes.
Janser?
Yes.
Motion is approved. Our next item is 7.2, stop control for the 16th Street Northwest at 30th Avenue Northwest. Prior to the opening Ramstead Middle School in 2013, the 16th Street Northwest and 30th Avenue Northwest intersection was two-way stop controlled, with 30th Avenue Northwest being free and 16th Street Northwest being the stop. City staff analyzed the intersection in both 2014 and 15 with the eventual recommendation to convert the intersection to an all-way stop in 2015. After several complaints, staff again analyzed the traffic control at 16th Street Northwest and 30th Avenue Northwest. The traffic conditions have changed significantly since 14 and 15. Staff recommends converting the intersection to two-way stop control, with 16th Street Northwest being free and 30th Avenue Northwest being stopped. The recommendations to the council is to pass an ordinance to remove the stop sign restricting to the following approaches at 16th Street Northwest and 30th Avenue Northwest intersections. The stop sign removal: 1, northbound 16th Street Northwest and 30th Avenue Northwest, and 2, the southbound 16th Street Northwest at 30th Avenue Northwest.
Move approval.
Motion by Alderman Pittner to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Ross. Any discussion on the motion to approve? Any discussion? Final call for discussion. Seeing none, the motion is to approve. Please call the roll.
Pittner?
Yes.
Padracula?
Yes.
Ross?
Yes.
Sitma?
Yes.
Evans?
Yes.
Janser?
Yes.
Olson?
Yes.
Motion is approved. 7.3 is the Visit Minot bylaws. In an effort to allow Visit Minot to actively ensure that the Visit Minot Board is inclusive and representative of our community as possible, the Visit Minot Board of Directors has approved changes to their bylaws that must now be approved by the City Council. After researching other convention and visitors bureau, Visit Minot found a community-controlled model is the best way to operate. The recommendations to Council is to approve the Visit Minot's proposed modifications to its bylaws.
Move approval.
Motion by Alderman Pittner to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderwoman Olson. Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion? Alderman Ross.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to move to table this until after the election.
We motion to table until after the election,
Until the next meeting.
until the next meeting after the election.
Yep.
Second.
Second by Alderwoman Evans. As this is not debatable, motion is to table until the first meeting after the election. I would look to our city attorney.
Mr. Mayor, that is debatable.
Oh, it is debatable. Oh, I apologize. Any discussion on the motion? Alderman Ross?
Yes. The reason I'm putting this up and asking for the council to reconsider this, you look at this proposal, and in our current process of appointing directors or members to the board of directors to Visit Minot, is the mayor works with the executive director of Visit Minot. They make the recommendations, and it comes to the council for approval. Okay? This operation, this organization is 100% funded by taxpayer dollars. I don't see that it's not broke. The council is overlooking that, and this change to the bylaws takes that away from the council. We go from having oversight to the board, which, they're saying better representation on the board. Well, that's kind of a slap in the face to the process we have now and a slap in the face to the mayor by saying this. The timing of it just doesn't smell very good either. I mean, it comes 1 week before an election for a mayor and some input for the mayor. Mr. Mayor, if you vote to approve this, hey, more power to you. I just don't want to see this organization, if they want to act like a private corporation or a private organization, then let's take away their tax funding and let them sell memberships. But right now, they're 100% funded by taxpayer dollars. 100% funded. Not 90, not 80, not 75%, 100% funded by taxpayer dollars. And now, after this approval, the city of Minot's only going to have one member on that board. Only one member on that board. And no oversight on who is selected for that board. We've got good representation on it now. It just comes across to me that the board of CVB or Visit Minot, I think they're worried about what's going to happen next week.
Further discussion on the motion, Alderwoman Evans.
So my second of the motion is not in any opposition to the proposed modification to the bylaws. I just feel because some of the proposed changes do impact how council and mayor interact with this agency, and we do have 3 council positions and the mayor's position up for election. I would like to see it debated and discussed after that time frame and not in the heat of people early voting this week and our election next Tuesday.
Further discussion, Alderman Pittner.
Thank you, Mayor. I obviously brought this item to this meeting, and there's an election next week. One of the reasons I brought this item, this item's been discussed for over a year. This has been worked on for a great deal of time. There's been a lot of effort put into it. I might not be on council a week from now, depending on how the election goes. So that's why it was important to me to make sure that this was on the agenda. And I'm not opposed to tabling items or postponing items if there's warranted concerns. I've voted to table items such as City Hall removal in the past. There was a flag policy that we instituted that was a request of a council member that we postpone it or table it while in their absence so that they could have input onto it, into that decision. And Alderman Padragula and myself were the only ones that voted for that. So if the motion maker has legitimate concerns as to why this item should not be approved, I'm open to tabling. Now, Tom, you did call me this morning to inform me that your intention to table this, which I wasn't surprised of. I don't think anybody's surprised at this point. I asked what your concerns were, and you stated that Visit Minot is funded by tax dollars, to which I stated, well, so is MACEDC, and this is very similar to how MACEDC's board is formed and functions, and I have no problem with that. I have no issue with it. Memberships, this is a community-owned and operated board is by far the most successful across the state. We are emulated. We're not reinventing the wheel here. This is what other organizations do. Tom, you also stated that you had concerns over the reduction in mayoral powers if this were to pass. As a person who preaches small government and limited government, found that concerning. He also alluded to being supportive of Visit Minot, not being supportive of Visit Minot in the past, and you stated that you're really trying to be supportive. So my question would be, how are you trying? How have you ever met or reached out to the council liaison on Visit Minot issues? The answer is no, because that's me. Have you ever reached out to the executive director, Steph Shanerock, on your time on council with Visit Minot issues? And the answer is no. Have you ever reached out to and or held a meeting with any of the executive members of Visit Minot board? The answer is yes. At the request of Randy Conway and Megan Laudenschlager on September 27th, 2021, you met with them, and you were 35 minutes late. I find it hard to believe that you're trying to be supportive of this organization. Again, just wanting to have control over an organization is not a reason to table or to withhold empowering a community partner that has been nothing but transparent and accountable to this board. I'm not going to support the motion to table. I'm going to support the motion to approve this because I don't know if I'm going to be here in a week. And this organization has nothing but the best of intentions for this community. They've proven that time and time again. I want to empower our community partners and not pull the rug out from under them. I'm here to work together. I'm here to be collaborative. Those are my comments. I will support approving my motion and my item tonight.
Alderwoman Evans.
Just to clarify, Alderman Pittner, our next meeting is June 20th, and you still will be on council because we're not reorganizing until, right, and reorganization is not till June 28th. So we do, I mean, it will be in light of this current council, but knowing the election results.
I will not support the motion to table.
Okay, I just want to.
Further discussion on the motion. Alderwoman Olson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will not support the motion either, simply because I believe that we have a responsibility tonight. We have an agenda in front of us. We are the elected officials right now, today, and it is our responsibility to vote on items that are on the agenda. I don't know why we would table one item and not table the entire agenda if we were simply waiting to see the election results. So I can't support this motion.
Further discussion on the motion to table. Further discussion. Final call for discussion on the motion to table. The motion is to table. Please call the roll.
Ross?
Yes.
Sitma?
No.
Evans?
Yes.
Janser?
No.
Olson?
No.
Pittner?
No.
Quadrigula?
No.
Motion fails. Back to the original motion. Discussion on the motion to approve. Any discussion on the motion to approve? Alderman Janser.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Could I ask, and I guess maybe either Alderman Pittner or Ms. Shanrock, give me the elevator speech version of, and kind of so the public hears this too, I guess. Give me the elevator speech version of where we are with the current situation that Alderman Ross alluded to, and where we will be if we in fact pass this. Because I think the key thing for me is that we, regardless of when we make the decision, that we do the right thing for the organization, and as we are responsible for the city of Minot, for the community. And so if you could do that, I'd appreciate it.
Ms. Shanrock.
Mayor Sitman and members of council, thank you. Yes, I'd be happy to answer that. This has been a conversation from the board of directors to the mayor and obviously Alderman Pittner for over a year. Last May, I was asked to contact the other CVBs to find out how they are nominated. And so we went through that process. And none of the other CVBs, not that we're certainly not playing well, they don't do it, so we don't want to do it either game. That's not it at all. But none of the other CVBs operate this way, nominate that way. And so from what I understand, the board has been, again, not a new conversation. This has been in the works for a long time. The process would be, there would still be 9 members. One would, to answer your question, Alderman Janser, one person would be nominated from the mayor, and the other 8 would go a process that is really very similar. It's how a lot of chambers do it. It's a lot how just other organizations do it. And to answer that, they go with a nominating committee. The board, there's a executive team assigns a nominating committee. The nominating committee works on a group of people willing to be on the board, and then the board votes for those positions. The structure is not a lot different. It does show in the bylaws the exact breakdown. there would be no revisions. I mean, it's not like we would say, okay, well, you three are no longer on the board because you don't fit within the model. That's not the case at all. It would really be the same board as it's already there. It's just moving forward, modernizing it, and becoming community-owned is the phrase that is really common, I guess, meaning the industry, the whole community are the ones that have their input on who gets on the board. Does that answer your question, Alderman Janser?
I think so, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shanerock. Before you leave the podium,
Yes.
as the discussion was initiated some time ago as far as a possible idea, one of the ideas that had originally, I think, come into my mind when you had made me aware of the discussion with the board was very similar to Park and Recreation, specifically recreation when it was under the city, in terms of its board and what the city council was looking at in terms of moving that over into Park and Recreation. That's a little bit different, seeing as it was kind of the dissolution of the Recreation Board and moving over into Parks. But one thing that did kind of stand out to me was the taxation for Visit Minot. The tax dollars that go to that is essentially taxation on its own members that do sit on the board. This is not coming from the penny sales tax off any clothing. This is coming off of the hotels and the restaurants that fund your organization that are meant to grow, well, their businesses. It took me a long time to kind of wrap my head around that, to kind of come to the solution that it is best, or at least in my own opinion, better served with its own organizations and under its own control. And I think that that's why I'm going to support the motion on this moving forward as well. But is there any other comments or questions from Ms. Shanerock at this time? Alderman Padugula, and we'll come back to you.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't want to speak for Tom here, but if I read between the lines, I hear him again calling for accountability and transparency. And I may have voted contrary to him on the motion to table, but I very much share his opinion that we need to be open and transparent and accountable. And although it's not tax dollars from the general citizenry being used to fund your organization, it is money collected from the public through the hotel tax, the lodging tax. And I guess I want you to ask you to talk about what mechanisms are in place to assure transparency and accountability in terms of how these funds are used and how your organization operates. I take it, for example, that you are subject to the open meeting and records law, so any journalist or muckraker out there could rake whatever muck there might be. Apart from that, what other mechanisms are in place, processes are in place to make sure that we know and the public knows how funds are being spent and what's going on?
Mayor Sitman, Alderman Padugula, thank you for the question. We are open records, and so we post our meetings. I send that out to also, there's a media alert that goes out when we have our meetings, which are scheduled at the beginning of the year. We just last week finished another review from Brady Martz that is done annually. We've got every board meeting we have, financials are shown. I come here once a year to talk about the Tourism Recovery and Resiliency Project, which by contract with the city, we do. We report on that for, I guess, accountability goes. I've got 9 board members that I talk with far more often than our meetings are. We've got an stakeholders and ex officio board that was going to meet last Wednesday. We were meeting this Wednesday. Those are all of our stakeholders in the community, State Fair and HUSFest and Minot State University and all innkeepers, all of our stakeholders. And so we meet with them regularly as well, just to keep that relationship going between all of our entities. I'm trying to think of what else I can tell you. You were at one of our board meetings. I can say I'm as transparent as they come. There's not a question that we've been asked that we've not been able to answer, and there's been nothing questionable that I'm aware of. Does that answer your question, Alderman Patrick? No?
It does somewhat.
Sure.
I guess the one of the fundamental issues would be is if, for some reason, the board and the organization decide to go in a direction that we think is contrary to the best interests of the city, what might happen in that kind of eventuality?
Mayor Sitma and Alderman Padragula, I guess if all of a sudden the organization was going in a direction that was very different than what City Council wanted, my hope is that a conversation would be had real soon. To be honest, Alderman Padragula, I'm not sure in what case that typically happens. What's the standard protocol? We are in regular conversations with Alderman Pittner on a every other week basis, talking about the direction of the organization. And as far as I've been told, there's not concerns.
Ms. Shanrock, I believe Mr. Conway also has some information to elaborate on the question. If you would just restate your name and your position.
Thank you, Mayor. Randy Conway, I'm the standing president of Visit Minot. I've been a board member for 4 years, approximately. I'm the current president. I went through the chairs, been involved on a monthly basis in meetings and throughout the entire process of this transition of Visit Minot that's happened since I've been on the board, primarily during the season, the COVID season. Our organization, including a representative from this chamber, sits on our board. Paul's been extremely active in, Alderman Pittner's been extremely active in our reorganization and our structuring of our organization. So let me answer a couple of the specific questions that you had, and then I'll come back to just an overview. As far as wrongdoing or what oversight do you have, I mean, obviously every year you have the ability to approve or disapprove a budget. Okay. In addition to that, our books are done by a third party. We don't do any internal bookkeeping of our staff does the checks. Everything is run through a third party. We're then audited by or reviewed statements by a separate company. So there's the accusation or the innuendo of wrongdoing or impropriety is actually a little bit insulting to people that have done a lot of work.
That's not something I was making. Please understand that.
Okay, fair enough. I wasn't necessarily stating you were. There wasn't any innuendo earlier of...
Wasn't making it.
Okay, no, fair enough. Our organizations went through an entire process of reorganization, planning, as well as strategic planning, in the goal of doing everything we can to improve and grow with tourism in our community. We've transitioned staff, we've transitioned the overall organization, and obviously whenever you're doing transition, there's always going to be pushback on an organization. That being said, I'm nearing the end of my term. This isn't about control. This is about full representation in the community by the people that are actually doing the work and building a team and building an organization that brings events, puts heads in beds, and does the things that our organization needs and wants to do moving forward. Our group just wants to work. We want to get things done. We want to bring people to town. We brought a good group of board members together. I'd encourage you all to take a look at the members that are on our board that are involved on a daily basis, weekly basis, and for sure on a monthly basis. I'd also encourage you to look at the committee that Ms. Shanrock has put together to approve or the funds that the funding mechanism that you've approved and how we go about the approval of award of those events. There's a massive project going on here and a lot of good work being done. And I come late. I'm sorry about that. I did not expect to be here today. A little bit unprepared, but this is an organization that's doing good work. We are the best way to give representation, in our opinion, to this group and to the people that are involved is by allowing them to grow their membership. This is not me picking board members. This is not Stephanie picking board members. This will be an organization that picks its own members that are aligned and looking to grow and bring tourism events to the community. Our books are open. The reason, and I'm sorry, Alderman Padragura, I didn't mean to take offense, but there's been other comments in the Minot Daily about impropriety coming from council. So that's really where that's a hard spot for someone that is doing good work and trying to do the right thing to have accusations come out of things. So that was not directed towards you. I'm sorry you took it that way if you did. Any other questions?
Alderman Ross.
Improprieties, and I know you're looking at me when you say that, Randy. What did I do that was what accusations have I made about the organization other than?
Just tonight, you made a comment about made an innuendo, but also in the Minot Daily, there's been comments about
Like?
wanting to see our records, and our records are open to anyone here that wants to look at them, citizens, hotel members, council people. It does not matter. This isn't, I'm sorry, Tom, but this isn't about you. This isn't about Sean. This is about an organization that's trying to move forward. This isn't about politics. It really isn't. I'm sorry that you see it that way. My opinion or my feelings getting hurt or your feelings getting hurt don't matter. Realistically, this is about trying to create an organization that can move forward and do good things for the community. I would argue, I mean, if anyone that looked, Doug, and even in fact when we met, Tom, I mean, we shared the ideas, the things that we've done. I don't want to get into them. Realistically, it doesn't matter. This is about us. This is about us trying to do good work.
You're accusing me of saying that the organization was doing the innuendo. I'm at a loss for that. I don't know what you're talking about.
The innuendo that we're here because of an election is an accusation to me that I take offense to, because it has nothing to do with you, Tom. I'm sorry.
One final question.
Are there term limits for the board members?
Conway.
The term limits are, there are not term limits, but we can, the work that goes into this organization and the time, I'm pretty sure that, I know my term will be coming due as soon as my election, or my term is up. I'll be stepping away myself. So this isn't about control for Randy Conway. This is about creating an organization. I have no long-term interest in running this organization. And we've turned we've got a fantastic executive director that works very hard at what she does, has built strong relationships with organizations that are doing good work and bringing events to the community, tournaments to the community, children's events, all the things that we want to bring to the community. Working very hard, works very closely with the park board, works very closely with Minot State, Thor and the softball group, the wrestling, I mean, all of the things that we're doing, the state fair, the things that we're doing to try to bring events. It's not about politics. This is about putting heads in beds and bringing people to our community.
Exactly, and I agree with you on that.
Any other questions for Mr. Conway before he leaves the podium? Thank you, Randy. Mr. City Manager.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Council, kind of to circle back to answer Alderman Padragula's question earlier. I just want to remind the council some of the basics here that we're discussing. By city ordinance, I'm talking section 20.5-14 in the city ordinances that address the Convention and Visitors Bureau, it states, "The City Council shall designate any agent or agency of its choice, which is independent and outside of the City of Minot government, to establish and operate the Convention and Visitors Bureau provided for in Section 20.5-13. Point being here is, and this, I believe this mirrors the state law language that gives the community of Minot the authority to even levy the lodging tax in the first place. It has to be dedicated strictly towards these efforts of Conventions Visitors Bureaus. So at the end of the day, should the worst case situation happen that the council no longer has confidence in Visit Minot to function as the Convention and Visitors Bureau on behalf of the city of Minot, the community of Minot, the council has at its discretion by ordinance and state law to direct that funding to another organization that you believe merits that confidence. So the action that's before you tonight does not change any of that. The action before you tonight is simply with regards to, should Visit Minot have the authority to determine its own board of directors, or do you still find interest on behalf of the public? That needs to be a recommendation of the mayor and approved by the council. That's what we're discussing tonight. This change would not, if approved, would not change anything with regards to future financing or anything like that. And the decision of the council retains that authority of whether or not Visit Minot continues to receive those funds as allocated by state law. That being said, I would recommend probably that if this action does proceed this evening, that we enter into some sort of contractual arrangement with Visit Minot, similar to what we do with MAC, EDC, and First District Health and those types of things.
And just, Mr. Mayor and members of council, for everybody's information, there is a contract with Visit Minot. It's from 1994, and the expiration of it is just 120 days from when either party decides to terminate it. So along with what Mr. Stewart said about the provisions in the ordinance and state law, there are also contractual provisions relating to this funding.
Thank you, Kelly. Further discussion on the motion to approve? Further discussion? Alderman Patagula.
Yeah, I guess two questions. First for our attorney. So is the current contract still in force, or is it?
Mr. Mayor and Alderman Padragula, as far as we were able to tell from our records, there's never been a termination notice by either party, so the contract is still in force.
Okay, but since it's almost 20 years old, it'd probably be a good idea to look at it and bring it up to date, as with so many other contracts we've had over the years. Okay, thanks. The question I had for Harold, obviously from Stephanie's standpoint, from the perspective of the organization, it appears that the maximum amount of independence would be what they're looking for, and that seems to be the standard in the industry from the industry's perspective. I'm asking you for your perspective as a representative of the field of city management, looking at city managers and city executives, what counsel would you give us? What are typical practices in the industry from the city management perspective? Are there any risks we're running, for example? I mean, it sounds like from what Kelly is saying, we have the ultimate authority. If worse comes to worse, if there's some horrible kind of event or some horrible change in direction, we have the authority to pull the money, which is the ultimate power, the power of the purse. That makes me feel much more comfortable. But from again, arguing our side, so to speak, what would city managers say typically?
Mr. Stewart.
Mr. Mayor, Alderman Padragula, I would say that it probably varies across the country. I've had varying experiences as well. Ultimately, this is a political decision on behalf of the council as the elected representatives of the community with regards to effective use of taxpayer dollar on whether or not you deem it necessary to maintain the oversight of who sits on that board that makes these decisions on behalf of the community. I've had varying experiences in a previous community I was in with CDBG. It was a similar process. People interested in serving on that board applied to the city council, and that appointment was made by the city council. In fact, I think even in that situation, the director, the hiring and potential release of that director laid with me as the city manager, not even with the board. I'm not recommending that necessarily be the case here, but it's about how much how much oversight that you as a council want to hold with regards to this. But again, as I stated before, at the end of the day, your largest power remains with being able to allocate what organization this funding goes to. It has to remain with this type of use. You have no, by state law, you have no ability to divert this funding to any other use. But you do have freedom in determining who is going to serve in that capacity on behalf of the community of Minot. So as far as best standard, it varies. It depends. Ultimately, this is a decision on what works best for the community of Minot and what you as a standing elected body deems as the appropriate methodology forward.
Thank you.
Further comments? Alderwoman Evans.
Ms. Hendershot, come up. I just have one. Piggybacking off of Alderman Padragula, so if we do rewrite this contract with Visit Minot, we could put in provisions for accountability and metrics and things like that in that contract to assure we're getting, what we want to see from an organization getting taxpayer money, correct?
Mr. Mayor and Alderwoman Evans, yes. We've started to do annual reviews of the services contracts with MAC-EDC, First District Health Unit, Commission on Aging, and within those documents, there are specific performance metrics that the city expects to receive in exchange for the public funds.
Great.
So we could do something like that.
Right. To build that right in.
It would be
that's the
negotiating.
expectation.
Yep, negotiating that type of an agreement, though.
Thank you, Kelly.
Yep.
Further discussion? Alderman Janser.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess in looking at this, one of the concerns that somebody might have is that folks who end up on this board, or that the thing kind of becomes a situation where there's a nominating committee of board members that nominates members to either succeed them or whatever. On the other hand, this is a little different situation because you do have the language that talks about certain folks have to be from various segments, such as the hotels and motels, somebody from food and beverage, a couple from community partners, and so forth. So, I think that in my mind, at least, I think that satisfies the concern about the board being kind of inbred, or to use a phrase. So, I think that the organization can operate with the approach that's being suggested here. When you think about how is the composition of the board and the way the board is populated going to change from what it is today to what it is if we pass this, it really boils down to that instead of being appointed, they are selected from within the groups that are most interested and most focused on this endeavor, and I guess I'm okay with that. So, thank you.
Further discussion on the motion to approve. Alderwoman Evans.
One of the things Alderman Pittner had mentioned, and I would just like Ms. Kramer to come up if she will, is the similarity that these proposed changes has to the Chamber's bylaws. And so, hate to put you on the spot, Brecca, but just tell us what's similar about the things and, what your thoughts are.
Sure. Mayor Sitma, Alderman Evans, and the rest of council. Maybe just a couple of high-level things from our organization. Thanks, Harold, for calling it out. That first meeting, I'm happy to kind of share some insights from our group. So the Minot Area Chamber EDC is a member investor-based organization. The majority of our funding comes from that resource. It's from dues from our members. The way we operate, as far as with the nomination to the board of directors, in our bylaws, in October each year, we open it up to our membership. You must be a member investor to be on the board of directors. Each organization gets one vote. Once we've publicized that, we take nominations, and then a nominating committee is formed in November. Once the nominating committee is met, we bring back that slate to the member investors. We publish that in our December newsletter. And then the member investors have an opportunity to either vote on those members, propose new, or challenge that slate. Once that is moved through, it goes through official process, and then we seat our new board of directors in January. We do have term limits. We have, you can serve 2 consecutive terms, and then you are asked to step back. We do try to, we do have 2 slots on our board of directors, though, that are annual positions. One goes to the city of Minot, and the mayor currently sits on that. The other goes to Ward County, who also puts in specifically for economic development activities. Our funding from the city was in place a number of years ago, actually, because of the sales tax. When the sales tax, the 1-cent sales tax originally passed, there was 15% set aside for economic development activities. And at the time, it was Minot Area Development Corporation, now the Chamber EDC. But that's kind of our process. So it's more because we are member investor based. That's our pool, but there's also the opportunity for individuals to see the slate, nominate, and our process starts in October.
Great, thank you.
Yep. And then from the accountability standpoint that Alderman Padagula mentioned, a couple of things we do. Obviously, we do have a city contract that we have certain deliverables that we're expected to meet. We provide reports to the city council twice a year. We do that in June and at the end of the year. Typically, it kind of falls into January. And we have to show the return on investment, and then we do track the key initiatives, and we do send our packet each month to the city, not only to the mayor, but also the city. And it is open record. Hopefully, does that answer your question?
It does, thank you.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Ms. Kramer.
Yep, no problem.
Alderman Janser.
I guess I'm going to make one more comment. I think it's important to remember that, like Chamber EDC, CVB, all of these board members, so far as I know, are unpaid. They're volunteers.
Right.
They are members of these boards through the good graces of their employers who give them time to serve, and essentially they're devoting their time for some period of time while they are on the boards to try to make the organization do a better job for the community. And I think we should bear that in mind. That's laudable, and there are typically good people doing that work. And so I think it's important that we bear that in mind. Thank you.
Further discussion on the motion to approve. Final call for discussion. The motion is to approve. Please call the roll.
Pittner,
Yes.
Quadrigula,
Yes.
Ross,
No.
Sitma,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson.
Yes.
Motion is approved. That takes us to 7.4 on our agenda. This is the Wayfinding Signage item or work order 4620. In June 2018, the IEDC study recommended placing a wayfinding program in the 5-year capital improvement CIP plan. The City of Minot approved implementing the IEDC findings on October 1, 2018. The city approved an FRP for planning and preliminary design to be let March 18, 2019, with the goal of improving wayfinding signage and opportunities through Minot. The recommendation to the City Council was to adopt the wayfinding signage project and incorporate the following implementation plan: Phase 1, 2023, Phase 2, 2024, and Phase 3, 2025.
I'll make the motion.
Yes, Alderwoman Evans.
I'll make the motion.
Motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Pittner. Ms. Shanerock.
Hello, Mayor Sitma and members of council. Wayfinding. Thank you for pulling up the presentation. Let me just make sure okay, perfect. We have got a project steering committee that has been meeting for the past 10 months. You will see on the presentation who those groups represent. I'm here presenting tonight just because I'm the chair of the project steering committee, but it's been very positive and collaborative among the entire group. We had staff from City of Minot, Chamber EDC representatives, Parks, Downtown Business and Professional, as well as Ackerman Esvold. And like I said, we've been meeting since last October, from what I understand, last August. So from what I understand, this is, I'm probably the newest person to this conversation, because this has been since 2018 when IEDC came forward saying that they recommended this, a wayfinding project. So just as kind of a, this has been this project purpose, I kind of want to just quickly revisit it. And the reason for that is because everybody on the project steering committee came to the consensus on what we were wanting to accomplish, and that is what you see on the screen here. The purpose is really to highlight our best amenities and to cross-promote. As you can see, wayfinding signage drives visitation and economic impact by pointing people to the areas a municipality wants people to see, explore, and experience. These were the destinations that, you know, as the project steering committee gathered and mulled over what are all the places that we want people to see when they come to town. And as you can see, we have them broken up between primary and secondary. Ackerman Esvold are gonna take you through some details. One thing that was really, I guess I'll say surprising, but in this process, we realized that there are a lot more DOT regulations than when we started this. We were quickly understood that there was a few more regulations than what we thought going into it. And Ackerman Esvold will go through that here in just a minute. What you see here on the next screen is really an overview. You can see here that we've got the primary, secondary, location, road signs, and again, Ryan will go through and kind of dive into each one and give some of the details on it. But this shows just a nice family of how all the signage can work together. So we've got primary and secondary location road signs. We've got primary downtown gateway signs, and that's what you see above the large structure. Secondary gateway, we've also got kiosks and some pedestrian signage. Ryan Ackerman is going to go through some of these details, and then I'll be back up to talk about the budget.
Good evening, Mr. Ackerman.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council. Ryan Ackerman with Ackerman Esvold. We're the consulting engineer and architect selected for the wayfinding project. I'm also joined by Austin Becker, one of my colleagues, who's a transportation engineer with Ackerman Esvold that worked with your traffic engineer on some of the technical considerations of the proposed signage. On the right-hand side of this slide, you've got a map that's very, very busy. It depicts the overall citywide signage proposal. There are 3 different levels of signage that are being utilized depending on the location. I'm going to touch briefly on what those levels are and the requirements of each level. First and foremost is the simple one, highway signs. It's pretty self-explanatory. It's important to note that highway signs, these are going to be the green background with the white lettering, not very exciting. Those are the only types of wayfinding signs that are permitted on highways or freeways with speeds of 45 miles an hour or greater. Okay, so we've got very, very limited flexibility to do anything creative on the highways. And just for context here on this map, that's basically the routes that are outlined in orange. In addition, the locations that can be identified on these signs are restricted to major districts of potential interest to highway travelers. So we can't identify on the highway a specific location such as, let's say, the Magic City Discovery Center. We can't identify that on the orange highways, basically because of the DOT regulations. After consultation with the city and the Department of Transportation, a total of 6 highway signs were included in that overall plan, with all 6 being located on the south side of the city. The 2 districts that are permitted for identification are the shopping district, i.e. the Dakota Square Mall area, and the downtown historic district. So just a mock-up of what a highway sign would look like. This would be the location along Highway 52 southeast of town, looking toward the northwest, showing the 2 permitted districts. So again, nothing really creative or exciting about this particular example. As travelers get into city limits though, and the speeds drop to 40 miles per hour or lower, there's additional opportunity for customization, community branding, and wayfinding. Signs still need to comply with all the requirements of the sign Bible that Stefan mentions every once in a while, the manual on uniform traffic control devices. But we do have the ability to meld some community identity and brand into these signs. Up to 3 locations are permitted on each sign. So again, we've got some limitations. We're limited to 3. Primary destination signs may guide a traveler from one point of the city to a primary destination on the other side of town. In other words, we can place a directional sign at, let's say, Burdick and Broadway to point travelers to the Magic City Discovery Center or Minot State University on North Hill. Ms. Shanerock listed the primary destinations previously, so I won't go through these. On the secondary side, as travelers become close to a destination, a secondary destination sign would guide them to their final stop. So travelers would not be guided across town to these secondary destinations. For example, a traveler is not going to see a sign in West Minot that points them to Corbett Field. Instead, as they're traveling along Burdick Expressway, they will see a sign that points them to Corbett Field as they get close to Corbett Field. Generally speaking, secondary location signs are going to have a single destination on them. However, for the Corbett Field example, we would likely incorporate 2 destinations, the other one being Roosevelt Park Zoo, which is right across the street. So it makes sense to couple those 2 destinations together. Primary and secondary signs, they have the same design in terms of aesthetic. Widths vary from 6 to 7 feet depending on the name of the destinations being identified. Destinations with longer names, to no surprise, require a bigger sign. In general, too, the faster the speed of the roadway, the larger the letters have to be. So it may push that sign to be a little bit bigger. I'm going to show you a couple of mock-ups now of the signs proposed along Burdick Expressway as you'd be traveling toward the east. The 2 locations are shown with the stars on this map. So this is the first mock-up located west of Broadway, looking east along Burdick Expressway. So as you can see, Minot State University would be a left turn at the light. The Magic City Discovery Center would be a left turn at the light, and the Scandinavian Heritage Park would be a right turn at the light. As you continue east, this is the second mock-up for an example of a primary destination sign. This would point you to the left to go into historic downtown, and straight ahead for both Roosevelt Park Zoo and the State Fair Center. What I've got on the screen right now just illustrates what the steering committee did by way of a deeper dive into downtown wayfinding. And the steering committee developed a series of components that would contribute to a comprehensive wayfinding strategy for the downtown historic district. These components are generally shown on the map. Ms. Shanerock earlier showed you the designs for these on a previous slide. There are 2 locations that were identified as suitable for placement of a significant district place marker. We're going to refer to these as the primary downtown gateways, which would be located at the west end of Central Avenue and the south end of Main Street, and I'll show you a mock-up on that in a couple of minutes. Supplemental or secondary downtown gateways were also planned to be placed at 5 additional locations. These are the blue circles that are shown on the map. These are the vertical markers that are approximately 3 feet wide and 15 feet tall. While most monitors may know of the parking garages and where they are, and most know the story associated with them, visitors aren't likely to have that context. They're not going to have that type of familiarity with downtown Minot. As a result, we're recommending signage on each parking structure. The baseline recommendation would be for 2 signs on each structure along the avenues. The potential exists for additional signage to be added in the alleys of the parking garages as well. But we think that signing of those parking ramps is pretty important. Pedestrian kiosks are an interactive feature that are going to allow pedestrians to search for destinations by category within downtown. So things like events or museums or galleries or food or beverages, desserts, government, etc., would all be captured within the kiosks. Preliminary locations are again shown on this map. Those locations being the intersection of Main Street and Central Avenue, at the northeast corner of City Hall, and then also at the intersection of 3rd Street East and Central Avenue, with the intent of coordinating a final placement with the redesign of 3rd Street as that project progresses through the city's CIP. In addition, pedestrian wayfinding signage would be utilized to direct pedestrians to the city parking garages, to the kiosks, and to public or quasi-public destinations operated by nonprofit entities. The pedestrian wayfinding signage will not be utilized to advertise an individual business, as an example. Some examples of quasi-public destinations might be the Railroad History Museum, the Tobby, Art Space, Mouse River Players, the Mouse River Greenway eventually, and other amenities that would be attractive, again, to visitors, as Ms. Shanerock alluded to. Our goal here is to cater to visitors to the downtown and to the community. Certainly some additional stakeholder dialogue is going to be necessary while these signs are finalized. As an example, we wouldn't want to point visitors necessarily to an attraction that isn't open but 2 hours a week. We may end up disappointing more of our visitors than actually helping them out in that case. So here are a couple of the mock-ups. This is the rendering of the Main Street version. One thing to note about this is that the minimum vertical clearance on this is about 18 feet, which is higher than the minimum required for a traffic signal standard. So minimum for traffic signals is about 17 feet. The minimum on this is 18 feet, so it would be compatible. You'd be able to get trucks underneath here without any problem. And the rendering shown here is of Central Avenue looking toward the east from Broadway. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Ms. Shanerock to talk about a couple of other ideas and timeline and cost.
Thank you, Mr. Ackerman. Ms. Shanerock.
Thank you, Mayor Sitma. You tonight were handed, Mr. Rosenthal handed a letter from the chamber just to show a letter of support. In there, it talks, Brecca does a nice job of talking about one brand and the importance of updating. And so that's what you see here. These are roughly about 20 years old, and so you can just kind of see a mock-up of what it would look like if we implemented the one brand symbol, and of course brightening that up just a bit so that it could be a little bit more visible. And then last, this is the project timeline and cost. This was included in your packet to show a 3-year phased project. It was, I believe, outlined as an alternative. The group would, as we've put a fair amount of time into this, as you can imagine, 2 requests. One is that this would be put on the CIP, and then the second one, and that was listed as an alternative in your packet, and that was, would it be possible to fund phase 1 in 2022 so that in 2023 we would be able to fund phase 1 and phase 2, or we would start working, we would complete the work for phase 1 and phase 2. So it kind of moves all the work up 1 year is what is requested.
Thank you, Ms. Shanerock. Questions from the council on the proposal for Ms. Shanerock? Alderman Patagula.
Actually, maybe a question for Ryan, or 3 questions for Ryan.
Okay. Mr. Ackerman.
Please understand this in the context of someone being very impressed with this and very favorably inclined, but I had 3 minor points that came up while you're doing your presentation. The first is that I saw some of the signs, particularly on Burdick, being right in the middle of the sidewalk, and I think you're making the sidewalks non-ADA compliant. We're spending a lot of money trying to make the sidewalks on Burdick. We have this huge project, and now if you plunk the signs, yeah, that one, you're going to take care of that somehow, I take it.
Mr. Mayor, Alderman Patrick, do you want me to address these as they come, or
Please.
all at the end? Okay, so in this particular case, and thank you for the question, because I overlooked what I should have pointed out on this photo, which were the dimensions. So if you look at this sign, you're right, it's plunked right in the middle of the sidewalk. However, between the 2 signposts, there is 5 feet, which is more than the minimum required per ADA. There's also 8 feet of vertical clearance underneath the sign. So essentially pedestrians go underneath the sign in
You'll be
between
able
the
to
two.
scoot your wheelchair underneath.
Yes.
What about
Got-
a bike?
Yes.
Okay, just want to make sure, because we don't have right on the street.
Okay, that helps me feel more comfortable. I guess I should have thought what 8 feet meant. I was focusing on the 5 feet, and that seemed, yeah. Okay, the second question I had was, will there also be an inventory and a culling of other signs we have posted that provide some sort of directional finding? And what I'm thinking of is, I don't know if it's still present or not, there used to be a little sign pointing to the State Fair on South Broadway right by the post office. It was very tiny, I don't know if it helped anybody. And there also are several signs in the downtown area on Broadway directing people toward the railroad station. Will there be a project to kind of synchronize those as much as possible and remove any that don't meet this project standards?
Mr. Mayor and Alderman Padregula, the answer to that question is yes. There will be a culling of sorts to basically replace those signs that would be ineffective, if you will, or otherwise duplicative, to make sure that the signage that's identified for wayfinding, that's associated with the brand for the community that hopefully is attractive to people and people, their eyes are drawn to. This is where we now have the locations community-wide for important features.
Because I'm concerned about the clutter too, and yeah.
Agreed.
And it distracts from the attractiveness and the noteworthiness, the attention-grabbing features of these signs, if you have others. The final question I had was in terms of kiosk locations. How about the railroad station and or perhaps the airport? I think the airport has more autonomy and does have some wayfinding type features, but I know a lot of people come into town on the railroad, some with bicycles and as pedestrians. And we've had issues too where people go to City Hall here looking for certain services and organizations where, they get into town at the train station and they don't know where anything is.
Mr. Mayor, Alderman Padregula, with regard to the kiosks, the focus of the kiosks was wayfinding for pedestrians within downtown. So as a result, just by that definition, the Amtrak station, as an example, and the airport were excluded from that because they aren't technically within the downtown footprint. Now, I'm not saying that that's a bad idea. I think that that type of wayfinding, that type of information is valuable. It just wasn't included with the work that the steering committee undertook.
Okay. When I look at the map here, it's just on the side of the line of what's defined as downtown. To me, functionally, the railroad station is downtown.
Okay.
So I would guess I would ask you to kind of reconsider that particular one.
Certainly, and just to update things on the fly here, that would add a fourth kiosk. Unit price of those was estimated to be $60,000. So that's the effect. I mean, quite frankly,
I understand that.
The more there are, I think the more effective they become for the community as a whole, but again, trying to find that appropriate balance.
Right. Those are the 3 specific issues I had. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Ackerman while he is up? Alderwoman Evans, and then come over to Ross.
So Alderman Padregula, do you mean like just having the airport and railroad station on a sign versus a kiosk? Because that would be cheaper.
No, having a kiosk there of some kind. Again, I think the airport probably has that through the advertisers and people who, have space there with signage. But make sure those 2 locations are coordinated. And I guess I would respectfully recommend putting a kiosk actually at the railroad station, because that is downtown to me.
Right. None of the secondary signs have the airport? Is the airport or railroad station on any of the signage?
Mr. Mayor and Alderwoman Evans, the airport is, and the Amtrak station, neither one of them are on any of the wayfinding signage because they have their own separate sign, if you will, that's dedicated specifically to that purpose, and we can't replace that.
Okay.
That's a universal symbol so that when everybody sees the green sign with the white airplane on it, they know which direction to go to get to the airport.
Okay. That makes sense. Thank you.
Similarly, the hospital falls into the same category.
Right.
Blue background, white H. Everybody knows that's how you get to the hospital. So we're not going to be placing those locations. In fact, we're not allowed to place those locations on community wayfinding signage.
Got it. Thanks.
Alderman Ross.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ryan, when you look at these, and I go back to the signs that were on Burdick, one of my concerns is looking at Public Works, where they pulled in on this discussion to talk about the snow removal and how that's going to affect the type of design that you have proposed.
Mr. Mayor and Alderman Ross, if any coordination occurred with Public Works, it would have come through community development. I know that I did not have any conversations with them. With regard to, just to speak about limitations here. So the example that I've got on here is it's a good example because we're limited on the amount of right-of-way that we have, okay? There are potential remedies to that. We can place a sign within private property if we secure the property rights to do that, i.e. do an acquisition or something like that to do that, to get it, out of the area where snow might be plowed and things like that. But it just, just balancing costs and impacts. So in this particular instance, it's a very, very tight right-of-way corridor. We've got enough room to maintain ADA compliance by going with a 2-post sign configuration and allowing pedestrians, including those that are bound in wheelchairs, to travel beneath the sign, basically. But certainly, can tell you as a property owner within downtown, snow removal is a lot tougher with all the signs that are down there. But that's the balance that we strike.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Alderwoman Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know that you addressed this many, many, many meetings ago, but I want to ask the question because I'm sure that maybe some that are watching online might be asking the same question. It's 2022, and we all have a smartphone. Where does wayfinding come in as a more effective way of leading people in the direction we want them to go instead of just putting it in their GPS?
Mr. Mayor and Alderwoman Olson, that's a fair question. I think for somebody like me, I'm probably more apt to use a smartphone to figure my way out. I'm probably not going to go and search out a kiosk, and heaven forbid, I'm certainly not going to ask for directions. I'm just not going to do that. It's a fair question. I guess as our committee worked through this, we felt like incorporating pedestrian wayfinding, it really increases the sense of place, and it assists people in finding locations, but more so it allows them to maybe immerse themselves into the experience of downtown instead of the experience of my iPhone, right? So, but it's absolutely a fair question. From a utilitarian standpoint, yeah, I could get anywhere I want to go with my phone.
And thank you, and I guess I would add in there, you sometimes don't know what you don't know, so if you have your iPhone, you might not necessarily be looking for a children's museum, but anyway, I'll just throw that in there, so thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments here? Mr. Stewart.
Just to respond to Alderwoman Olson's, I used to somewhat be in the same camp as well, but I don't know if some of you that are frequent GPS users recognize when you get into your home territory where and the GPS wants to take you on a route that is probably not the most effective way to get to your location. Wayfinding signage is one way for the community to help direct that traffic in a more efficient, effective way than what your GPS algorithm may do to get you to wherever you're going. And so I do believe that there is still an effect above and beyond even just the aesthetics and the character of the efficiency, moreover, the GPS itself. So,
other discussion on the motion? One little tertiary comment to add, and through some of the different discussions I've had with different levels of enlisted or commanders at Minot Air Force Base, signage has actually been one of those issues that has actually been mentioned in the past, is that sometimes it is difficult to find certain areas for people who first time to Minot or have never lived here before. So this absolutely addresses some of that to some extent, but it just for council's consideration, it has been an issue that has at least been discussed prior. Alderman Bittner.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, I want to echo that sentiment, whether it's airmen, airwomen coming to our community for the first time or students. I remember when I went to college, I was a freshman at NDSU, they said, drive around and get lost. That's how you found your way around, so you got to know the community. This is going to lend to that, I think, and give this a sense of community throughout the community to point the people that aren't from here in the direction of some of things that we should be proud of. So.
Alderwoman Evans.
I just want to make note of the request to move implementation from 2023 to 2022. Well, I love that idea. I talked to Mr. Lakefield today about what the rest of 22 budgets looks like, particularly economic development money, and it's all, of course, spoken for. So I was going to make a motion to move it to 22, but I'm not going to. But I still hope that, as we move forward in 2022, we keep this like on our radar, and if funds become available to move up implementation starting in 2022, I will wholeheartedly, lead that effort and have council allot some money to that. So.
Final call for discussion on the motion to approve. Alderman Patagula.
Yeah, just a comment. I like this idea. I think, speaking from my professional background as a psychologist, I think the sense of identity is really important. And if we can assist parts of the community and the community as a whole in having a more visible identity and identifying the features that are important to us, I think that helps the community, the well-being of the community, and certainly makes us more attractive. I keep thinking of the example I heard many years ago on National Public Radio. There were a group of urban planners and urban specialists and geographers were looking at the importance of place, and they interviewed people from an inner city neighborhood in East St. Louis, and they asked these people where they were from, and the people couldn't give an answer. And the researchers saw that as an expression of the total disorientation and decay of the community. Everything had been destroyed. It was a very impoverished area, a tremendous amount of crime. People didn't have any identity in terms of place. And I think that was a good point, and that stuck with me all these years of you can't tell where you're from. That's a horrible kind of thing. I think we're seeing something similar to that in Ukraine now and in other war areas where there's systematic devastation of places, and that has a profoundly negative impact on communities, on groups, and on individuals, certainly. So I like the idea of enhancing our identity, enhancing our sense of place. I think that's very important. The one hesitation I have here is with the gateway arches into downtown. I think they're a bit grandiose. They remind me, and I don't know that they're necessary downtown because it's obvious this is a built-up area. It's downtown. It reminds me of a lot of the famous arch in San Francisco. I think it is on Grand Street into Chinatown, which is the scene of innumerable tourist pictures. There it has historic value, I think. I'm not sold on those two, but I guess I'm not willing to make a fuss about the two overhead signs. I like the idea of signs by the side of the road, even though we're assured that they're not going to interfere with traffic and fire trucks and things like that. I'm not keen on the overhead signs. They seem a bit grandiose to me, but it's one of those things where in politics you have to put your own personal feelings aside sometimes, and you make compromises. So I just wanted to be open about that. I'm not keen on those, but it's not worth jeopardizing the whole process. And I feel strongly enough in favor of the whole process and what it means to accomplish, what it aims to accomplish, that I don't want to raise questions, although I do have that hesitance about those two signs. So I will be supporting this.
Final call for discussion. The motion is to approve. Please call the roll.
Evans?
Yes.
Janser?
Yes.
Olson?
Yes.
Pittner?
Yes.
Prajagula?
Yes.
Ross?
Yes.
Sitma?
Yes. Motion is approved. Our last item in our action item section is 7.5, participation in the State North Dakota Main Street Initiative, also known as MSI. The state government is encouraging all cities in the state to become familiar with Main Street principles that create healthy, vibrant communities. State officials have spoken to staff requesting Minot's participation in the Main Street Initiative. The recommendations to the council is recommend the city council approve the resolution to become a Main Street North Dakota community and to authorize the mayor to sign the resolution.
Move approval.
Motion by Alderman Ross, second by Alderman Pittner. I believe we have Maria Efforts Hansen here from the North Dakota Department of Commerce. You drove all this way. 20. Do you have any comments on the North Dakota Main Street Initiative here? As it's been about since 2018 since some of the early discussions took place on this, and how much has the Main Street Initiative evolved over that time?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, my name is Maria Efforts, and yes, I drove 20 miles because I live in Velva. So I didn't, we all work remote with the Department of Commerce now, so it is a privilege for me to be able to represent the North Dakota northwest area of the state. The Main Street Initiative has grown, where it started first as a concept with encouraging communities to take a look at how do you turn back? How do you look at your community? How do you grow naturally? How do you follow the three pillars at the time, which were vibrant, healthy communities, smart, efficient infrastructure, and 21st century workforce. Well, since that time, we've added the fourth pillar, which includes diversifying your economy. We've held a variety of different educational resources and summits. In this last year, we've worked really hard to kind of bring that government as a whole approach. Thank you for all of your participation in the Main Street Initiative meeting. It was a great meeting, lots of youth involved, which is very much a priority for the Main Street Initiative, and as it should be for all communities. We're not going to go anywhere if we can't have a diversified and young next set of people that are going to come up and help us. And so what we've been doing is working as the government as a whole, and so as Main Street communities are progressing with planning, big emphasis on making sure that communities plan, and I know Minot is long ways down that process. You don't need us to help you, but we do have grants and resources to help on planning. We also have resources to help on vibrancy, things that, those little bits and pieces. It's a small grant, but it's amazing what a little bit can do. And last year, downtown Minot had a vibrancy grant where they did the geocaching. And what a great success it was. Just those free, simple things that made people walk around and find ways to engage and get lost a little bit in downtown. We've also partnered now this next year, the State Water Commission, that they will provide additional points and dollars for communities that have planning and have become part of the Main Street Initiative network. The Council on the Arts is also giving extra credit to the communities that have gone down that planning road and have an action plan, which I know that you guys already have some of that, but put it into writing. And our last partner in that is the Department of Transportation. And so any of those communities that run along state highways, they're asking us to help guide them on the communities that have included infrastructure, have included improvements in walkability, have included utilizing their state highway network, and they're going to give extra points. They're also going to look to us and say, okay, which communities are eligible? So we get to have some of that help. And as I said, the reverse, we're encouraging people to plan by providing those planning grants. The last thing that we have coming up is an Economic Development Association. We are the caretakers of the governor's $1 million planning grant. What we have decided to do with that, with the approval of economic development and the governor, is to offer communities the opportunity to do placemaking. Placemaking for resiliency and placemaking to encourage workforce. So we have up to $100,000 that'll be available for communities to take a look at how you can grow and become a better place and plan for it. We can't actually do it for you. Sorry, the EDA doesn't fund that yet, but it'll help you get everything into play so that you can take a look at the elements of your community that encourage people to visit, spend dollars, and hopefully stay as workers and workforce. There you go.
Thank you,
Any
Ms.
questions? Happy to take any questions if you need
Thank
it.
you, Ms. Efforts. I appreciate that. Any questions at this time from the council? I appreciate it. Thank you. We have a motion to approve and a second discussion on the motion. Any discussion on the motion? Final call for discussion. Seeing none, the motion is to approve. Please call the roll.
Ross?
Yes.
Sitma?
Yes.
Evans?
Yes.
Janser?
Yes.
Olson?
Yes.
Bittner?
Yes.
Padragula?
Yes.
Motion is approved. That is the end of our action item section. Number 8 is personal appearances. This is an opportunity for anyone to come forward and speak on any item that is or is not on our agenda this evening. If you do come forward, I would just ask that you state your name and city of residence, and we can turn the mic over to you for 5 minutes. One more time, call for public appearances. All right, seeing none, we move down to the miscellaneous and discussion items. No items were listed on here. However, I do have one to bring up for council consideration. It was about 2020 when our city attorney was removed from the dais as we went into social distancing at the dais. With discussions with her recently, it would, and even kind of comparative to tonight, make more sense to have our attorney back at the dais for quick answers rather than running back and forth between her chair. And I would just look to see if the council has any objection to bringing our city council or our city attorney back to the dais.
I think she needs to come sit here right now.
Seeing as we have one meeting after this until changeover, it was kind of my recommendation at that point would make sense. Okay. All right, Kelly, we'll bring you back. Any other items for miscellaneous and discussion items? Alderwoman Evans.
So as mentioned, but I want to remind people, city elections are going on right now. Early voting started today. It is through next Monday at the Ward County Administration Building, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. If you missed that opportunity, Election Day is actually Tuesday, next Tuesday. All of Minot will be voting at the Mesa, and that's 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So please use your voice and cast, votes for all of the people that you want to see represent you in our community.
Other discussion items? Seeing none, that takes us to our final item, and that is adjournment.
So moved.
Motion by Alderman Pittner. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Janser. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. We're adjourned.